See here as well. Do we already have someone from the?
Morning.
Good morning, Excellency. Apa khabar?
Baik.
Fantastic. Excellency, first of all, thank you so much for accepting our invitation. Despite your hectic schedule, you chose to be here in the morning. Thank you so much.
I'm sorry that I have to delay and postpone, and then finally the day is the day. But I can only see some faces. I hope that the participation is good, because the timing maybe is not so aptly
young people.
chosen.
No, Excellency and Ambassador, I assure, Lokesh is here, who is also the officer on special duty to the Honorable Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, who actually designed this entire program. And of course, Lokesh, you would know Ambassador Excellency, who is here, who has agreed to give us the time.
Good morning, and thank you so much for joining in today, Excellency. We are so happy and glad to see you with us. We have most of our interns, about 4,700 of them, listening live to this session, whereas the call will be between only a few of us, but then we have telecasted it live.
So, Ambassador, because all the interns are joining in YouTube, and if you would have seen some of our social media, your presence was the highest that we received in the social media as well. Like, all of them were so excited to hear from you, especially Indonesia, India, and then to Brazil, this transition or given for G20. But thank you so much once again, Ambassador, for joining in. For all our viewers, namaste. Thank you for joining in an early morning. All the Chief Minister Youth Internship Program, Intern State of Madhya Pradesh, the program which is launched by Honorable Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, has really shown what good governance can happen with the participation of interns, young people at the grassroots, by the effective leadership at the top level as well. And that has really brought together in this entire queue of second batch that is going to come, which is the last day, that's today. Her Excellency from Indonesia has joined. I mean, of course, she's from Indonesia, Ms. Ina Haginin Tias Krishnamurthy. Correct me, ma'am, if anything goes wrong. But Ambassador is currently posted in India as an ambassador to Republic of Indonesia to India. And I'm so glad that she could accept our invitation to speak with all of you young people of Madhya Pradesh, to share her experiences as an ambassador, and to also hear from you some of how young people's participation in governance is so crucial and important. Ambassador, last year, I would say rather, that while I was there in the C20 Indonesia, it was so mesmerizing to understand that how Indonesia has really shown what could drive this new world order in the G20. And of course, while we were there, the entire thought of stronger together was the theme. And that very theme has really carried forward with this Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, when we make one earth, one world, one family, and one future. While you were also there in my hometown in Siliguri in Darjeeling, and enjoyed some of the lovely tea garden visit, Harsh sir mentioned that how you have been very proactive in also supporting the marginalized communities there in the hills here. And I think that is exactly what brings our culture together between Indonesia and India. I mean, every culture that we share is so similar. In fact, to the very fact that the waste management that we visited in Atat Kendong village in Bali showed that how people participation really can bring through God, through people, and through recycling methods as well. And I must say to all our interns, the carbon footprint that is being reduced at that village is historic. It has received the world news as well. So, Ambassador, of course, some of the very key youth initiatives that are in Indonesia, which is now known to the world, are the Bye Bye Plastic, or to the Garuda seal that connects both of us. And with this, I will not take much of our time and will hand over to you to share more of your experience, Ambassador, where we can revolve this conversation around the G20, the transition that is happening to the global South-South cooperation from Indonesia to India. And according to you, what do you feel that the role of young people in Indonesia and India is important as we drive in shaping this governance together? Ambassador, over to you.
Thank you so much, honorable guests, ladies and gentlemen, friends, namaskar. May peace and health be upon us all. A very good Monday morning to you all. First and foremost, of course, I'm truly honored to be invited by the government of Madhya Pradesh, and in particular, the one who sent me the email, Mr. Sailesh Singhal, founder of Youth of India Foundation, to give a message at this interesting and important event of world's largest paid internship youth governance model. I would like to further congratulate all the organizing committee in organizing such an innovative engagement of young, bright minds with excellent future ahead. Let me start by focusing on my country, Indonesia. Many people in India surely are familiar with the beautiful island of Bali. But do you know that there is much more to Indonesia than Bali? Indonesia is located at crossroads between two oceans, the Pacific and Indian Oceans. We share Indian Oceans with India as well, and straddles between two continents, Asia and Australia, or Oceania. Indonesia, this may not be believed, but Indonesia is the largest archipelagic country in the world, with a total of 17,000 islands, including 5 major islands. Our total population is approximately 275 million, with a very diverse society, over 700 spoken languages, and 1,300 ethnic groups. We have this motto, and also from Sanskrit, just like my name, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, or unity in diversity, which is enshrined in our national emblem, the Garuda, and the Constitution. Since 1928, to manage such a large country, we recognize Bahasa Indonesia, or Indonesian language, as our national language. So in 1928, we recognized one homeland, one nation, one language, Indonesia. Similar with India, and Indonesia is a vibrant democracy. Next year would be very interesting for both Indonesia and India, as our countries will hold the national direct election to choose our next leaders. While India will hold the election in May, we will have election in February. On the economic front, according to the World Bank's semi-annual Indonesia Economic Prospect report, economic growth of Indonesia is projected to be around 4.9 to 5% this year, with the normalization of domestic demand following the post-pandemic jump last year and the projected global economic slowdown. Now, allow me to touch upon the relations and collaboration between India and Indonesia. Mr. Singhal already mentioned some, but I would like to again elaborate more. Let's begin with the geographical significance, which many of us, including me before I'm posted here, that our countries are direct neighbor. In fact, the island of Andaman Nicobar is only around 160 kilometers from Sabang Islands in Indonesia Aceh province. So Aceh province is the tip tip province of Sumatra Island. This distance is even closer than between Andaman Nicobar Islands to mainland India. So how close we are. Both countries share a rich and long-standing relations which was built on historic ties and civilizational interaction for more than 2 millennia. Many examples can be found to explain these strong linkages. Among others are maritime trade routes. Maybe you heard Baliatra, the architecture of temples. Maybe you heard Prambanan and Borobudur, absorption of Sanskrit words to the national language, including my last name, Krishnamurti, and the stories of course, Ramayana and Mahabharata, which are still widely taught and part of our daily life. The strong social and cultural linkages in the past have made our relations vigorous. It has also laid out an important foundation for our present and future cooperation. The shared history of colonialism also brought our two nations very close to each other. History demonstrates that in the mid-1940s and 50s, our forefathers were mutually supportive in their efforts to create a world free of colonialism and imperialism. Even before India attained independence in 1947, India supported Indonesia's struggle for independence during 1945 till 1949, which Indonesian people we never forget. India played a significant role in the efforts to give pressures to the Dutch to withdraw themselves from their pursuit of restoring empire in Indonesia. 23rd March to 2nd of April 1947, India hosted the Asian Relations Conference, bringing together leaders of 29 countries to express solidarity with the freedom struggle in other parts of Asia and foster cooperation amongst Asian people. At that time, India already showed its leadership of the Global South. With India's special efforts, a pilot by the name of Mr. Biju Patnaik flew Indonesian Prime Ministers Sultan Syahrir and Vice President Muhammad Hatta to attend the conference. Later in 1947, the situation in Indonesia was deteriorated because of a large-scale offensive by the Dutch. Again, Mr. Biju Patnaik helped our Prime Minister Sultan Syahrir to flee to New Delhi with his Dakota aeroplane. If you want to see the Dakota aeroplane, you just go to Odisha and then you can see the airplane there in front of the airport. I've seen it. It's beautiful. India also raised the issue of Indonesia independence in the United Nations. So again and again, India shows its leadership of the Global South. In many UN meetings at that time, particularly the General Assembly, India openly expresses support to Indonesia's right to self-determination and independence, while highlighting the need to end the colonial rule in the world. In January 1949, India hosted New Delhi conference at the ministerial level to yielding recommendation to the UN Security Council that detained Indonesian leaders to be released, that the government of Free Indonesia to be restored. The Security Council then passed a resolution incorporating this recommendation. Again, it shows the leadership of India. Even prior to the transfer of sovereignty of the Dutch to Indonesia on 27 December 1949, India was among the first that sent first ambassador to Indonesia on 18 December 1949, marking the official opening of diplomatic relations and the jure recognition of our sovereignty. Meanwhile, the Indonesia's first president Sukarno attended India's first Republic Day as the chief guest in January 1950, just 1 month after the Dutch transferred its complete sovereignty to Indonesia. it was only on 29 January 1950 that Indonesia designated its first ambassador to India, and years later, Indonesia hosted the Bandung Conference of 1955, bringing together the newly independent countries of Asia and Africa. Together, our forefathers helped write the closing chapters of colonialism and the opening sequence of the non-aligned movement, which forced the bonds of South-South cooperation and Afro-Asian solidarity. Fast forward to the recent decades, the friendly relations between Indonesia and India continues to this day. Next year, Indonesia and India are celebrating the 75th anniversary of diplomatic relations. Indonesia and India have been experiencing intensive engagement since the leveling up of the bilateral relations into comprehensive strategic partnership and share the vision of maritime cooperation in Indo-Pacific in 2018. In economic sector, the bilateral trade between Indonesia and India in 22 last year reached $32.7 billion, which is an all-time high. Both countries have set the target of bilateral trade of $50 billion in 2025. I hope we could achieve that. And meanwhile, India's investment in Indonesia stood around $1.5 billion in the last 2 decades. This figure could be much larger, as some investors may use third countries such as Singapore to invest in Indonesia. And this is also very historical, just like Pa Singhal said about G20. Both countries are also a close partner in G20. Do you know that we actually shift the presidency? If we supposed to be the presidency of G20 this year, but because we are chair of ASEAN, then we ask the help of India to shift the presidency. And then India, of course, being a close friend of Indonesia, say yes to the change. And that is why this year Indonesia is part of G20 Troika with India as the president. As a member of Troika, Indonesia stands ready to support India to ensure the success of the summit in Delhi in September 2023. As COVID-19 pandemic now reach the endemic stage, both countries emerge as among few nations with robust economic growth. IMF has forecasted that India will grow by 5.9% and Indonesia will grow by 5% in 2023. It is far above the forecasted global GDP growth of 2.8% in 2023. If the current economic trajectory is on track, India is on course to become the world's third largest economy after the US and China by 2030. And similarly, IMF projected that Indonesia will become the 5th largest economy in the world in 2030. With those projections, it is important to note that stronger Indonesia and India relations in the coming future will be beneficial not only for both countries, but also to the region and to the world. The 21st century is set to be the Asian century, with our commonalities of the values of democracy, of the values of non-alignment, of the value of robust economies. We both are deemed able to shape the future of the Asian century. My last highlight is on young people. Both Indonesia and India boast a youthful population. Our combined population are massive, almost 1.7 billion people. out of 1.7 billion people, approximately 60% of Indonesia population and 65% of India's population are being under the age of 35. And I believe the young demographic holds the key to shaping the destiny of our nations. Both our country should tap into our demographic bonus. To harness the power of youth, both countries should continuously strive to build an even stronger people-to-people partnership by leveraging the already solid historical, political, economic footprints. And in many occasions, I have continuously said we need to build the connectivity of the past, the present, and the future. The youth are the driving force of progress, innovation, and change. The youth are also the catalyst for economic growth and development. In an increasingly interconnected global economy, the youth are the source of entrepreneurship, innovation, and as well, technological advancement. For example, the youth of India and Indonesia have been instrumental in both countries, digital revolution, such as payment system, propelling the growth of the IT sector, e-commerce, empower small, medium enterprises, etc. And I believe that our countries could find opportunities by advancing the collaboration in this field. Indonesia stands ready to cooperate with India for the development of our youth. Both countries could pave the way for its youth to appreciate intercultural differences by fostering meaningful engagement. Thus, in turn, will create trust, build understanding, which in the future will be beneficial for our future relations. To conclude, I would like to congratulate the government of Madhya Pradesh, Youth of India Foundation, and AIGGPA for the success of the Chief Minister's Youth Internship Program. And finally, I would also like to express my sincere best wishes to all participants. May you rise and reach the fullest, the brightest future. Thank you. Good morning. Namaskar.
Thank you so much, Ambassador, for such a wonderful remark. You represented so much of passion while you were sharing such close relationship with India and Indonesia. Of course, your name connects us with this land of Krishna and Murthy as well. And you have been absolutely amazing to share how the close relations between India and Indonesia is not just about economy, it's not just about diplomacy, it is beyond that. And it is about the cultural partnerships and experiences that binds us together. Of course, while I was in Indonesia, the shows of Ramayana are much more extravaganza in Indonesia by the lovely young people than I could maybe witness here in our country. And I think that is absolutely amazing. For all our interns, one thing that you really focused on, and coming from the land of Odisha, just near to Odisha and in Indonesia still celebrates that common culture and festival which binds this two state, the state and the country together. The Bali Jatra is still celebrated here in the state of Odisha. And thank you so much, Ambassador, for all your inputs. Before we come back to you with one or two questions from the interns who are all joining us on YouTube Live, we have the Honorable Officer on Special Duty to Honorable Chief Minister of Madhya Pradesh, Lokesh, here with us. I would request Lokesh sir to kindly share what was the major idea when the Chief Minister championed this program and where you led this all together at the grassroots, and what has been the inspiration to drive this, and maybe you would also love to highlight the success story and how today is the last date to the second batch where we'll become the world's largest youth internship model, having 10,000 young people across the state of Madhya Pradesh to drive governance. So Lokesh, over to you.
Shailesh, first of all, I would like to thank you, the Ambassador, for once again for joining this discussion, and second, highlighting the integration between India, Indonesia, and the common areas of interest, and some common principles which may be followed by both the countries to promote growth. And I completely agree with her that young people is something we all should invest in, and that will become the destiny of our success in the coming future. So thank you so much for your views, Ambassador. I think what we are trying to do is almost similar lines what you said. Madhya Pradesh within India is also a state which has a large young population, which will continue to grow till 1950 probably. And to realize our demographic dividend, it is one of the efforts where we're trying to invest in our youth. Post-COVID situation, when the internship opportunities got squeezed in the private sector, this was vision of our Honorable Chief Minister, who said that if private sector is taking time to recover and will take time to give opportunities to our youth, it is the appropriate time when the government should intervene and step in. And that's how they created this large program, given the size of the population, size of the student base, size of the young people in the state. We said probably we'll look at about 5,000 people who may intern with government. We will give them exposure and experience of life projects on the ground. They will work on the governance agenda for the social impact. They will help in taking the governance to people's doorstep. And then parallelly, we also ensure that we are able to give them learning opportunities. Hence, quite a few agencies are working with us, where UNDP, UNICEF, Harvard, Piramal Foundation, they are providing their online courses to our interns. And young leaders like Salesh are helping us to give exposure to our interns to even the global space as well, where he's been connecting us to great offices like yours, and then also bringing some experts who are helping us to create digital awareness, digital literacy within our interns. So from that standpoint, I think this is the structure of the program. As Salesh mentioned, we are now going ahead and engaging our second cohort, which means at one point of time we would have about 10,000 interns working with us, which would make it probably one of the largest global initiatives in this segment or in this space. But the opportunity is being provided to youth to develop the basic skill sets, the orientation, awareness to build their bright professional careers and future in the coming years. That is what remains the prime objective. This program is quite close to heart of our Honorable Chief Minister. Hence, he keeps on, wherever he travels, he keeps on meeting with our interns. We call them Jan Seva Mitra, which means the serving the community, and they are able to mobilize the community to take benefit of the government schemes and welfare programs. Parallelly, also identifying local challenges, local issues, and highlight it to the administration for early closure of such issues. And third is the micro communication. So from that standpoint, I think we've been able to bring the youth to become interface between the communities and the government, and get learning both on professional side and helping them build their capabilities so that they are better job ready for the job market in some sense. So we are so happy and thankful that you have come along to give it a patient hearing and guide us in our journey. We are so glad to have you with us today.
Thank you so much, Lokesh, for that remarks, and thank you so much for welcoming her on behalf of the state government of Madhya Pradesh as well. And of course, all the 4,695 interns, which would become 10,000 in this coming month. Ambassador, as you're joining in, of course, a lot of our interns are there on YouTube Live. I know you have also a meeting right after this, but maybe if you permit, if we can take one or two questions quickly. Yeah, okay. So Ambassador, a lot of them on YouTube are mentioning that how do you think that India and Indonesia could work together? Of course, you mentioned very briefly on Indonesian and India's youth participation, but how do you think that we can come together through your embassy in partnering and giving opportunities to young people here in India? and also to young people in Indonesia who may want to join in India? And what does the role of embassy play? Over to you, Ambassador.
Thank you for the question. I arrived in Delhi last year, January. So my tenure reached 1.5 years. Throughout 1.5 years, we focus on building partnership between universities by exchange of students, by scholarships, and also exchange of lectures. And also some of the universities in India are very interested in finding the roots. Also for us also to finding the roots. Like for example, Nalanda University and Jambi University in Sumatra, they want to, because there is many artifact and historical, how should I say, temples and buildings. The remains are there, but we don't know the history. So many of this engagement involve young people, not because of only for the study itself, but also for the traffic of people-to-people contact. If we give meaning to the relationship, then the traffic of people-to-people contact will be increased as well. What I understand during my stay of 1.5 years, like I said in my remarks, many Indonesian people only understand Bali, but Indonesia is more than Bali. India also, the existence of India culture, India temples and architecture is also in many parts of Indonesia. So we need to build that understanding as well. Same like our young people. Now we also want them to understand that India is more than New Delhi, more than we call it Bombay because in the past it's Bombay, but now it's Mumbai, or even Calcutta. You know, we only know those cities. I just got back from Hyderabad, for example. It's such a staggering difference. When I came to Hyderabad last year and I come just 2 weeks ago to Hyderabad, it's just the development of that city is very surprising. So we need to increase awareness of what we can do as young people. In Indonesian embassy, also established hospital-to-hospital cooperation. We call it sister hospital because India having one of the best technology of medical. We also established sister hospital. Also, young people established that idea of sister hospital actually through understanding of Ayurveda. Because now in Bali, in particular, the interest of Ayurveda medicine and health and concept of Ayurveda also increasing. So we also want to give the understanding through that channel, health. The last one that we are so keen on establishing the cooperation, and we have done it only last week, which is the startup G20. If you see the startup from Indonesia coming to here, they're the age of 25, 24, in that age, already a startup. A startup on language training, a startup on the last one is logistic, but logistic in for students only, things like that. A very interesting way of thinking through the from the eyes of Gen Z the millennial generation. So three areas that I can mention what we have done. And I really hope that with this program of internship also, there are ideas to create traffic of people to people, because I think we are still lacking of it.
Ambassador, none of us would want you to stop speaking. You share so much of wisdom, and at the same time you share so much of actionable work that is being done between Indonesia and India. And while you speak the kind of magnificent routes that you draw, while you mentioned about Nalanda and Jamba universities, also reminds me of Varma Deva College, which again has its root from India. And there is so much more. Each names in our country brings us more together. And I really appreciate and thank you for you being here. Of course, we would love to strengthen and support and be part of any of these programs and see where young people can come together between these two countries. Just before we go towards conclusion, we have Nipun Bajpai, who comes from one of the most tribal areas in Madhya Pradesh called Devas. And he's the RA, the head for the interns in his district. On behalf of all the interns, he has one question that he would like to ask you, and I'll hand it over to Nipun to please.
Thank you so much, Salish sir. Thank you so much. Good morning, respected Ambassador ma'am. Thank you so much for letting me ask a question and for addressing our interns. Thank you so much for mentioning the ancient civilizational ties between Indonesia and India through Ramayana, through non-aligned movement, and through the current progress that we are doing. I welcome you all on behalf of Chief Minister's Youth Internship Program. We have 4,695 interns that we call them in Madhya Pradesh, and that is only through the honorable leadership of Chief Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan sir and Lokesh Sharma sir. Ma'am, like you mentioned that we need to harness the rich demographic dividend that Indonesia and India both have around 65% working age population. So I just wanted to ask you two skills that you would like to mention for future employability, because our interns are already strengthening the last mile connectivity. They are already working at the grassroots level. They are already the interface between public and administration. So I just wanted to ask two key skills that you would like to disseminate, that will help them in their future employability skills.
Wow, that's very hard question. Actually, I have to name only two. Okay. First and foremost, I think I have to talk about myself. What I learned throughout my life, and in particular my career as diplomat, I think the first virtue that needs to be incorporated in our mind is that never settle to the present. We need to see the future, because the present is only a footprint at the end of the day. Because if we talk about in 2 hours, maybe this time it's only footprints. So maybe my take on my life lesson learning is that don't settle for the now, the present. And therefore you need to always open the mind for any possibility, even possibility. Just open that window of possibility. Second, by virtue, I think Indian youth have the capacity more than a lot of us, which number one, you have already have the ability to express yourself openly. You know, I never met an Indian individual who can never express oneself. So the expression is good, because in my culture, sometimes being Asian, we tend to be timid and reserved. But I never met an Indian individual that is reserved, that just, that is a plus in a way. But at the same time, you need to manage when and how you express yourself. With that note, maybe the ability for communication is the best way for the future. Communication of writing, communication of verbal, not so much of saying things, but to manage what you say and to choose and pick and choose what you listen and what you acknowledge and what you understand. Maybe the best virtue, because the information are abundant. Unlike my generation, we don't have social media. But we need to pick and choose which one is useful, which one is not, which one is good, which one is bad. So in a way, I think the future is about that. So I think the two capacity and capability needs to be always understood by the interns, that life is not stopping at 11:10 p.m. on the 10th of July. No, it's the lives will be continuously on, and will be a struggle sometimes, but at the same time, you will feel worthwhile that you face the challenge. Because a failure is only a postponement of a success. If you're not or never experience fail, that means you never try.
Ambassador, you truly sound like a mentor for all of the interns today, and thank you so much.
I'm old. Maybe that, Gilki. I'm old.
I am not going to put it that way. While I shared the stage with His Excellency the Prime Minister of Australia, with Minister from Indonesia last year in the Green Hydrogen Summit, I was asked the same. I was told the same thing, and I said, no, we are following the footsteps of the elders who are senior young people and not old. So you're senior young, to say. To most of you interns, Ambassador has almost three decades of successful diplomatic career. She was also appointed as an advisor to the Ministry for Foreign Affairs in the economic diplomacy, has been Deputy Permanent Representative of Indonesia to United Nations, Director of ASEAN, which she also mentioned, Economic Cooperation, and so many more. While she started, as she said, as just a head of section in the Director of Foreign Information, DG Social, Culture and Information Affairs back in 1995. And as she said now, never settle for now, never settle for present. And exactly that's where all of young interns who are joining in would look her as a mentor, where she gave clarity that we don't have to settle now, but look forward, look to the future as Indonesia and India develops its relationship in economical growth, in diplomatical growth, in social exchanges, and so many more in education and health. So thank you so much once again to all of you who have joined. Ambassador, to you, thank you so much for taking your time out in making space of everything that you do, speaking with so many young people who are joining us live on YouTube. And today, of course, is the last day to apply for the next batch of 4695 interns, where we'll have collectively 10,000 young people driving social change in the state of Madhya Pradesh towards the vision of India 2047, and celebrating the 75 years of diplomatic relationships with Indonesia and India. In the end, salam, om shanti, shanti, shanti. Thank you so much. Namaste.
Thank you so much. All the best.